Good afternoon. My name is Danielle Edwards. I'm Jet Foundation's Community Engagement Manager. We're going to be kicking off this virtual workshop series with ReveraGen in just a few minutes. So please stay patient and just hold on tight. Good afternoon. For those of you who are just signing on, thank you so much for joining our virtual workshop series. This is a new way we're trying to get out into the community. As you have known, we had to shut down our family workshops, and this is just a way we're trying to bring more information and education to those in different areas. We're excited to share with you today ReveraGen, who will be speaking on their drug today in a little bit. We're about to kick it off in just a minute or so. Okay, I think we can start things off, Gabby, if you don't mind. This is ReveraGen again for those who are just joining. Thank you once again for joining our virtual workshop series. And if for any questions that you may have, feel free to drop it in the comments below.
Hello, my name is Lori Conklin. I'm a pediatrician and I work in medical and regulatory affairs at ReveraGen Biopharma. I'm very happy and honored to be here today to update you on the Vamorallon program. And I'm thankful to Jet Foundation for inviting us to speak today. I hope at the end of this program that we can answer some of your questions that you have. So please feel free to reach out to us. Steroids help to keep boys with Duchenne stronger, but they're also associated with serious side effects. Many boys with Duchenne, steroids improve strength and mobility. They can prolong ambulation and arm function. Sometimes they can delay respirator use and the onset of scoliosis. But these benefits come with a price over time. Symptoms like weight gain, bone fragility, growth stunting, Cushingoid features, suppressed immunity, and mood and behavior changes are common. Early studies in the lab and the clinic suggest that Vamorallon could provide benefits to boys with Duchenne with fewer side effects. To determine if this is true, Vamorallon is currently being studied in a clinical trial of boys with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. The name of this trial is VBP 15004, or Vision DMD. I'm going to explain this trial further during my talk. Here we are showing the molecular structure of prednisone overlaying Vamorallon. They have different structures, and different structures lead to different function. Vamorallon was originally found to be a muscle cell membrane stabilizing drug, and then was also found to be anti-inflammatory, inhibiting an FKB. On the left is the chemical structure of prednisone, and on the right, that of Vamorallon. The shape of the molecule is different, and this changes the interactions of Vamorallon with its binding sites, the glucocorticoid receptor and the glucocorticoid response element. Thus, Vamorallon retains anti-inflammatory effects, but loses some of the effects that lead to metabolic side effects associated with steroids. Vamorallon is also a mineralocorticoid receptor blocker, which is the opposite of prednisone and similar to eplerenone. This slide shows an overview of the Vamorallon clinical trials, both those that are complete and those that are ongoing. In the upper left corner, you can see that 48 boys were enrolled in a phase 2A trial called BBP 15002. The boys then continued on to a 6-month extension trial called BBP 15003. They were then able to enroll in a 2-year long-term extension study known as BBP 15 LTE. The last patients are finishing the LTE trial this month. These trials were predominantly designed to evaluate pharmacokinetics, which also means what the body does with the drug as far as levels in the blood and how the body metabolizes the drug. And they were also designed to evaluate longer-term safety and the ability to, and the best dose for the drug. Although efficacy outcome measures like time to stand, time to run, walk 10 meters, and 6-minute walk test were collected in these studies, the study was done as an open label study, so everyone knew what dose the child was receiving, the family and the physician and the evaluators. Currently, the VBP 15004 study is underway. This is an international study of 120 boys with Duchenne, and it will generate critical data about the effectiveness of Vamorallon in Duchenne. This study is being done with input and funding from patient advocacy groups, as well as from the FDA and the European Medicines Agency. The study chairs are Dr. Paula Clemens from the University of Pittsburgh and Dr. Michaela Gugliari at Newcastle University. There is another study under planning at this time called VBP 15006, and this is designed to be a safety and pharmacokinetic study in boys ages 2 to 4 years and ages 7 to 17 years. This slide shows a schematic of the series of open label trials known as VBP 15, 002, 003, and LTE. In VBP 15-002, 12 boys started taking the lowest dose of Vamorallon, 0.25 milligram per kilogram per day for 2 weeks. Then they stopped taking drug for 2 weeks. And then they went back on drug at the same dose for an additional 6 months. That's 003. Once the dose, after the 003 study, if the dose was proved to be safe, at the lower dose, those patients could escalate to the next highest dose that was safe. So patients that started on 0.25 milligram per kilogram could escalate to 0.75, and those that started on 0.75 could escalate up to 2 and eventually to 6 if they desire. In the long-term extension, patients were able to stay on 2 or go up to 6 and come down to 2 if they desired to do that. And that decision was left to the family and the physician. Thus, it's important to remember when looking at these data that patients stayed in their dose groups in 003 in that first 6 months, but after that, they were able to switch between the 2 and 6 milligram per kilogram dose groups. This slide shows data from the VBP 15-003 study where patients were treated for 6 months at the same dose level. And on the x-axis, this is the mean change from baseline in velocity, time stand velocity. The red line is the 0.25 milligram per kilogram dose group. The blue dotted line is 0.75 milligram per kilogram. The yellow and green are 2 and 6 milligram per kilogram per day dose groups. And the purple dotted line is labeled Synergy DNHS, which stands for Cooperative International Neuromuscular Research Group, Duchenne Natural History Study. So this is a natural history study that was done previously, not at the same time, but in that study, patients were followed over time, and this data looks at those patients that were in that study that did not receive any treatment. And we're comparing the outcomes in this in the Vamorallon study to those from the Duchenne Natural History Study. And with this comparison, we see that all outcomes improved over 6 months treatment in the 2 and 6 milligram per kilogram dose groups, and that they improved over both the lower doses in the Vermour study and then also over the natural history data. And these data have been published in the journal Neurology. Now we're going to show some data from the long-term extension study, or the LTE. This study, as I mentioned, finishes up this month. The last patient's visit is at the end of this month. And then we'll be able to analyze safety and efficacy data on the 42 boys who finished 2.5 years of Vamorallon treatment. And this is extremely important information. We don't have that analysis yet because the trial is not yet completed, but we did an interim analysis after just 18 months and looked at only the boys who are receiving either 2 or 6 milligram per kilogram per day, the doses that seem to have an effect in the VBP 15-003 study. And some of these data will be shown. On the slide, we show that boys treated for 18 months with either 2 or 6 milligram per kilogram per day showed continued improvement in outcomes even after 18 months of treatment with Vamorallon. So we looked at 10-meter run walk, 4-stair climb, time to stand, 6-minute walk test, and North Star ambulatory assessment, and saw that patients had improvement over baseline after 18 months in these measures that were treated with those doses of Vamorallon. Shown to the right are time to run walk, mean with the bars or standard error of the mean, time to run walk 10 meters on the top, and time to climb 4 stairs on the bottom. These first 2 symbols, the green and the purple, are patients treated with Vamorallon in the LTE for 18 months. And the black line is their baseline. And so that you can see that in these, for the green and the purple, you can see the difference from baseline to 18 months. for both the 2 and the 6 milligram per kilogram dose groups. 2 is green, purple, 6 is purple. The orange and black symbols are data from the Synergy Duchenne Natural History Study. And so the orange are patients who did not receive any treatment in the Duchenne Natural History Study. And so they have a baseline and they have a measure after 18 months. The black symbol are patients who've been treated for steroids for 18 months in that same age group in the Duchenne Natural History Study. We don't have any baseline data. So we don't have any data on these patients pre-starting steroids, which is why there's no black line. However, from this analysis, we can see that the effect of Vamorallon in the study was similar to that of corticosteroids in this age group. We don't yet have any data directly comparing steroids to Vamorallon in a single study. We analyzed those patients in the VBP15 LTE study who had been on treatment with either 2 or 6 milligram per kilogram per day of Vamorallon for at least 12 months. And we compared them with data from a 12-month trial of deflazacort and prednisone in boys with Duchenne. And this was data that was published in a medical journal already. And so it was done it was compared to a historical trial. Growth stunting was seen with both prednisone and deflazacort treated patients in the study that was already published. But growth stunting was not observed among the boys treated with Vamorallon in the VBP15 LTE study. These graphs show body mass index trajectory of the boys treated with Vamorallon over 18 months in the VBP15 LTE trial. On the left, we see the 2 milligram per kilogram cohort, and on the right, we see the 6 milligram per kilogram cohort. We do see that there is some weight gain in about 10% of patients receiving Vamorallon, above what would be expected from a child undergoing normal growth. In summary, all efficacy outcomes showed dose-dependent improvement after 6 months of treatment in the VBP15-003 trial at the 2 and 6 milligram per kilogram dose levels. All efficacy outcomes showed improvement from baseline after 18 months of treatment at the 2 and 6 milligram per kilogram dose levels. The effect of Vamorallon at this age was similar to the effect of corticosteroids as reported as seen in a historical natural history study, although this was not a head-to-head comparison. In the VBP15-002 study, there were dose-dependent inflammatory biomarker changes demonstrating that the drug is having an anti-inflammatory effect in the boys taking it. Objective safety outcomes indicated that Vamorallon has a benign safety profile. There was no growth stunting seen, and bone formation biomarkers increase after Vamorallon treatment, whereas steroids decrease them. A Cushingoid appearance was less frequently reported with Vamorallon than would have been expected with steroids. And to date, no serious adverse events have occurred that are attributable to Vamorallon. For patients who participated in the VBP15-002, 003, and LTE, we want to notify parents that we are conducting a study on the individual return of data to participating families. So if you're interested, if your son has participated in one of these trials and you're interested, please contact Suzanne Gaglianone at this email address. Suzanne is our patient travel coordinator at ReveraGen, and she'll be happy to answer your questions about participating in the return of results. I will now speak with you about the currently enrolling trial, VBP15-004, also known as Vision DMD. This trial was expected to close enrollment in March 2020, although that is being extended due to COVID-19. The enrollment criteria are boys ages 4 to less than 7 years of age, never having used steroids, and the ability to complete the time to stand without assistance in less than 10 seconds. This is a 12-month-long study, and we've been able to provide drug after completion of the study to boys who wish to continue Vamorallon under expanded access or compassionate use pathways. Dosing is done daily at home by mouth. Visits are approximately monthly. There's no muscle biopsy, and every participant will receive study drug in the second 6 months of the study. In the first 6 months, half of patients are on study drug, 25% receive prednisone, and 25% receive placebo. Please reach out to your physician or contact Suzanne at ReveraGen for more information on this trial. These are the trial sites in the US and in Canada, and the site principal investigators. Again, please reach out if you have any questions. You can reach out to these sites directly or to Suzanne at ReveraGen. And we're happy to answer any questions that you might. This exciting program has been made possible by parent foundations, universities, and governments. And a very special thank you goes out to all the families who have participated in our trials. And we are very happy to answer any questions that you might have. I'll be available to answer questions, and I hope that Suzanne Gaglianone will also be able to join me for questions that you might have. Take care. I hope you all stay well, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you, Lori, so much for that presentation. As Lori said, we'll be opening up the questions right now. You should be able to write a comment on your right-hand screen. Feel free to drop any ones that you have below, and we'll take this time to answer.
Thank you, Gabby and Danielle, for having me today. It's really exciting to be here. I'm Lori Conklin, and I just gave that presentation. And again, I'm happy to answer your questions. So I see we have the first question, and the question is, are there any, there's a couple of them coming in. First question is, what is the difference between Vamorallon and the drug that is under study by another company called Catabasis? And I know that, they are different drugs completely. They have different structures. They share an action of inhibiting NF-kappa B, and so they both are anti-inflammatory drugs. ReveraGen has a couple of other actions that are different from that other drug. It's a membrane stabilizer, and it blocks the mineralocorticoid receptor. So it acts differently than that drug. So it's important that both of these drugs are evaluated, and that we see that we evaluate the effect of both of these drugs in boys with Duchenne. I think the next question, are there any plans to allow those patients that are on Exondys 51 to screen for the Vamorallon trial? And that's a really good question. Right now, the patients that are receiving any other investigational drug or exon skipping drugs or gene therapy trials are excluded from the current trial, VBP 15004. And the reason for that is severalfold. One is that that we want to be sure that we can adequately and accurately assess the safety of Vamorallon. And if there is another drug that someone is taking at the same time that could have potential safety effects, it would be very difficult to interpret. It could be very difficult to interpret if there were any safety signals, where the safety signals were coming from. And so that's why during a trial, it's so important to do our best to assess the safety of a new drug. And then the efficacy or the effectiveness how well the drug is working to help patients with Duchenne muscular dystrophy is important also. And so if there's another treatment that's being taken at the same time that could have an effect in some patients but not in others, it can be difficult to assess efficacy. And so during the trial, that's the reason why patients are not included that are taking other novel drugs or investigational drugs. All right. And so I have a third question, and that is, do you plan to allow siblings of those in the trial to receive Vamorallon under expanded access? So I'll explain a little bit more about expanded access. This is a great question and one that we've had asked previously. So when patients are finishing the long-term extension and 004, and if there's a desire of the family and the physician to continue the child on Vamorallon, ReveraGen is making that possibility, making that available for those families. And so in the United States, we have what's called an expanded access protocol, and the protocol is limited to the patients that are finishing the LTE and VBP 15004. However, because siblings are often ineligible for the trial, where we don't allow siblings to be in the same trial, we are offering in some cases for siblings of trial participants to receive Vamorallon under expanded access. So there are a couple of details regarding that. One is that we've never given Vamorallon to any child less than 4 years. And so we are unsure of the safety of giving Vamorallon to a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old. And so thus we are saying that really that we're limiting Vamorallon to siblings that are older than 4 years of age, because we only have safety in that group of patients. We want to wait for the patients that are in the trial to finish the trial and move through to expanded access themselves before we offer the drug to their sibling. And that's the rationale behind that, is to make sure that there's no confusion regarding dosing or administration of the medicine to the patient that's in the trial. But once they're finished with the trial and they're on expanded access, then we're happy to talk about offering the sibling Vamorallon under expanded access. So I encourage you to reach out to your physician or to Suzanne, and we can help to answer questions about having a sibling receive Vamorallon under expanded access. Next question I have is, what is the recruitment status and when do you expect completion of the study? That's a really good question as well. As you saw, our initial enrollment was planned to go through the end of March and has been extended because of COVID-19. However, we're trying to get the study complete as soon as we can enroll enough patients. Right now we have, and this is changing day to day, but I believe it's 102 patients who are randomized in the study. And we'll continue enrolling until we have 120 boys enrolled in the study. So I think that while there is an extension, if you have an interest in the trial, I would encourage you to reach out in a timely way. I know it's difficult right now because of COVID-19 and all the restrictions, but just reach out and we're happy to try and work things out, because there are some barriers right now, of course. Suzanne, do you want to add anything to that question?
No, that I just would encourage them, as you said, to reach out, just so if there is interest, once things do open up and we see exactly where we are and how COVID has affected the people already participating and who has been screened already, that, you know, at least we would know that you're interested, and if we still have room, you know, we can contact a site as close to you as possible.
Very good. What tests can I, the next question is, what test can I expect when screening my child for your trial? So there's a list of assessments that are done during screening, and that includes blood test and being seen at a site, having a physical examination, and having blood drawn. I'm not, you know, in the beginning, there's an echocardiogram and an EKG that are done, and also a spine x-ray at the beginning of the study. And a DEXA scan is also part of the assessment as well.
And an eye visit too. And
an eye visit. Yeah, exactly. And those measurements are being done at baseline and then at the end of the study, at the end of the 6 months of the study, to assess for any improvement or safety signals in those patients that are taking the drug.
I think often they want to know, no, there's no biopsies required at all, so
right,
nothing particularly invasive.
We have, I'm waiting for the next question to come through, but we have 33 sites in 11 countries. And there are sites throughout the US, as I had put on that slide. You can go back and look at those. And ReveraGen does, if you live a distance from a site, ReveraGen can help with any travel costs. We are, even during this time of COVID-19, requiring that the patient be seen in person for the screening, even at this point. But again, reach out and we can see what we can do to help.
I can take this next one. How are you helping those in the trial to receive drug and study visits during this time? So we have been working with individual sites to find out what their needs are, what the restrictions are, and we have, the medical team has decided what visits need to be done and when safety visits need to be completed, and try to narrow that down to essential only. And so we're working with all of them, getting drug to the patients and getting them to either a local lab or getting a mobile lab to them. And so those plans have been really being worked out and on a case by case and site by site need. The next one, what arrangements are made for family screening, travel expenses, lodging, airfare? So as Lori said, we're not screening at this point, but in the past and going forward, for our families, I actually book the travel for them, work with them, find out when that's going to happen, and then we try to prepay everything we can. So any airfare or travel or hotel lodging expenses, and then we reimburse for food to a certain extent and any other transportation type expenses, mileage if they're driving, etc.
I just wanted to add to Suzanne's comments that because of travel restrictions, we're not screening as frequently as we were, but there are some sites that are still able to screen patients. So again, reach out to your physician and or to us, and we can help advise you, because there are still some sites that are able to screen on site, and others that it's being delayed at this time.
Yeah, that's right.
So the next question is, how do you expect this Vamorallon to work with other approved drugs if it were to be approved. So I think that we expect that it would not be used with other corticosteroids, and so it would not be used with prednisone or deflazacort. We anticipate that it very likely could be used with other drugs, however, and with exon skipping drugs or with gene therapy, it likely could be used, although we don't have data yet to support that concomitant use. But we think it will be able to be used with other drugs as well. There are, it should not be used with corticosteroids, and it also should not be used because it has some of the similar mechanisms to a eplerenone. We are at this time saying that people should not take a eplerenone with Vamorallon, either in the studies or in compassionate use or expanded access, because it has a similar action. Can I screen for this trial at my house? We're afraid to leave due to the virus. I completely understand that situation. At this time, ReveraGen thinks that it's important and has put out a statement that the screening visit has to be done in person. And then other visits we are being able to do remotely. And so, like Suzanne said, a lot of the, we have to have safety labs and make sure that the patients that are in our trial are safe. And so we prioritized making sure that patients can get labs drawn remotely if they have to, and that they can have teleconference or telemedicine visits with their physicians if necessary. And even in some cases where necessary, that they have their time to stand outcome measure recorded and evaluated by a remote evaluator. So there are some, modifications that we put in place so that a lot of visits can be done remotely. But it is still important that that first screening visit be done in person. And so at this point, that's a guideline for the trial. Hopefully some of these sites will be able to screen in the near future, where it's difficult. And there are, as I said, some sites that are still screening in person. And so if you're not, if you're able to get to those sites, I know, again, travel's quite difficult at this point as well. But hopefully things will start to open up. I would suggest to reach out, and Suzanne would be a good person to reach out to see if there's any possibility of getting you to a site where they are doing screening, or to at least get back in touch with you when things start to open up and the screening lessons, the restrictions on screening lessons. So the next question is, do we plan to raise doses higher? And so the answer is no. The doses that are being studied currently are 2 milligram per kilogram and 6 milligram per kilogram. And those doses were carefully selected by doing earlier clinical studies and evaluating safety at higher doses. In the original studies in healthy adult volunteers, the doses went higher. And these doses are the ones that we feel are safest and most likely to have a positive effect for the patients. And so these two doses were brought in as the doses to study in this 004 study. Do you plan to enroll non-ambulatory patients at some point? I'd love to see how this could help my son who's 17. This is a really important question and a question that we receive often. And yes, there is a plan, not in this current study 004, but in another study that's in the planning stages called VBP 15006, in which it's planned to study patients who are older and younger, and including patients that are non-ambulatory. The next question is, does behavior issues and autism cause my son not to be able to screen for this trial? And maybe Suzanne can also assist with this. So there are boys with Duchenne muscular dystrophy that have behavior issues. And of course, autism is a common condition in people who have Duchenne and who don't have Duchenne. Behavior issues that make it impossible to assess the child are a problem, because if, for example, we need for a child to be able to do the measures like a time to stand test or time to run walk 10 meters and to work with the evaluator to do those measures. And if they're not able to do those measures or to take the medication, then sometimes that does become a problem for enrolling in the trial. Suzanne, do you want to comment on that further?
Yep, absolutely agree. But it depends on the severity and the individual child, as you said, how they can be evaluated. But we do have some children enrolled who have some issues and have done well. So I would say that it would be up to the, talk with your doctor and the site physician, and if you're interested, I would, definitely pursue that if you think your child could follow the directions and take the medication.
Yeah, I agree. Are we continuing visits via telemedicine during the pandemic? That's a great question, and it's one that we've been very busy with at ReveraGen, trying to make sure that patients can be still seen. And yes, we've been successful with many sites in working through telemedicine visits, with their physician in place of in-person visits right now, because so many sites are restricting in-person visits and families are concerned about going to the hospital appropriately. So yes, those visits are happening via telemedicine right now, which is exciting. I'm sure many of you may be working with your other healthcare providers via telemedicine. And so that's a real shift that's happened during this pandemic in both clinical medicine and clinical trials to make this happen effectively and efficiently. So the next question is the study open to patients with Becker muscular dystrophy? That's a really good question as well. Currently, the VBP 15004 is only for patients with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. But we are pursuing and planning a study of Vamorallon and Becker muscular dystrophy. And so Dr. Paula Clemens has received an NIH grant, and we're working on plans for a study on Becker muscular dystrophy. So stay tuned for that, because more information is likely to be coming forward on that trial. Can I travel from another country to enroll in this study? Suzanne, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So, not to be vague, but it depends. Yeah. We do have several sites in other countries, in Europe, Australia, the UK, and so there may be opportunity there. However, we do have some patients who we call cross-border patients, and if possible, we try to find a site that is willing to accept that patient. But again, reach out, and we do everything we can to try to find a site that would work for the family and the trial.
Thanks, Suzanne. So the next question is, are you not using 4 milligrams per kilogram per day as well? So just to clarify, in the 002, 003, and long-term extension studies, there were 4 dose levels: 0.25, 0.75, 2, and 6, and that's milligram per kilogram of body weight, because all children are all different weights, so we do a weight-based dose. and it's a liquid medication. And so that wide dose range was done on purpose because we wanted to really assess, really in a robust way, what is the best dose for both safety and efficacy, because it's a balance. We want to make sure that we get the dose that has the best effect for the patient who has Duchenne to improve their outcomes, but also we want to reduce the side effects that are associated with corticosteroids, and sometimes going up to higher doses, there can be side effects. And so that's why that wide dose range was studied. We did see safety even at those higher doses at 6 milligram per kilogram. But we also did see effectiveness and improvement in the outcome measures at both 2 and 6. So again, we're in this 004 trial, we're trying to get as much information we can about the doses that are effective and side effects that happen at both the lower 2 and the higher 6 milligram per kilogram dose. In the long-term extension studies, there were a few patients that went up to 6 and had weight gain, and so their doctor brought them down, and we did allow them to come halfway in between to 4 milligram per kilogram. But currently in the study, the doses that are being studied are 2 and 6 and not 4. And then we'll, based on the results of the study, along with the FDA and reviewing all the data, we can help to come to a decision about the best dosing that should be recommended for patients with Duchenne. Other questions?
If anyone has any more questions, feel free to drop them into the comment section below. Oh, we do.
Oh, here. Is it possible to post the slide with the contact information again? Gabby, are you able to flip back, or will these be
Yes, hold on 1 second.
Okay. There. Yeah, there we go. So Suzanne is on the line, and Andrea, oh, there she is. Suzanne's a great contact. She's a good person to reach out to. And our trial is posted on clinicaltrials.gov, which is a clinical trials website. So you can find out more information about the sites on that website as well. It was really a pleasure to answer questions virtually. And again, we're happy to answer further questions. Feel free to reach out.
Yep, definitely. Anything you think of, just email me and I'll get it to Lori or whomever can answer your question if I can't.
Lori and Suzanne, I just want to say thank you guys so much. This was a great presentation with some really great questions from the audience. Thank you everyone who joined us today. We'll be posting this live on our website in the next few days as well. So again, stay tuned. Please let others in the community know about this presentation and share your experience. If there's no more questions, I say we can close down the webinar, and thank you, ReveraGen, once again.
Thank you. Have a good day.